In today's tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to engrave acrylic disc ornaments with the help of your Cricut machine.
Well, hey there everybody! Today I'm going to show you how to engrave beautiful acrylic disc ornaments with the help of your Cricut Maker machine. You can use the Cricut Maker Original or the Cricut Maker 3. Any of those machines will work with the engraving tool. So you will need to have one of the Maker models in order to do this. These are really fun to make. They take a little bit of time just because the machine has to go through the process of engraving, but they are really beautiful. They're something that they look so elegant on a Christmas tree and the lights can shine through them. And I'm going to show you how to do this step by step. The files that you're seeing here are available below in the video description. If you're on my blog, just scroll up to the supply section. You'll find a link in order to access them. What I've done with these files here is I've designed them so that they have what's called a hatch fill pattern inside of them. And when you add a hatch fill pattern, it allows us to create literally a fill inside of our shapes and words here, and that makes it look nice and solid rather than just a very vague outline that can be very hard to see. So doing this with a hatch fill approach is a great option, and I have more tutorials on how to do your own hatch fills, which I will also include below for you. But these are already done for you with the templates that I am including, so you don't have to worry about doing that. The other supplies you will need will be a strong grip Cricut mat. You want to make sure it's a strong grip. That's absolutely necessary. You'll need some painter's tape, and you'll also want to have some ribbon to string your ornament up with. This part is optional, but I'm going to be adding a few rhinestones to my acrylic ornaments just to give them a little extra shimmer and shine, something that makes them pop real nicely. So I'm using some Beacon Gem Tack for that, some very small rhinestones, and then also a rhinestone pen in order to pick the rhinestones up with. That's all the supplies you're going to need for this project, and I have resources for all of these in the blog post that goes with it. So make sure you click that link below and it will give you all of the links if you need to know where to find any of these materials. I don't think I mentioned a minute ago, you will need an acrylic disc ornament. You can find these on Amazon. I'm using a 4-inch one here. You could do them a little bit smaller. I did do a 3-inch one and it worked great as well. So it doesn't have to be huge, but I like the 4-inch ones because it really makes the engraving stand out that much more. And again, resources for that below in the video description. All right, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, so the first thing we need to do is get our files set up properly in Design Space. You'll want to upload the SVG files. All of my designs are free on the blog. I have several different designs that are available, and they all have that nice hatch fill pattern in them, so you don't have to do any of the setup work. You can just enjoy it. What you want to do to upload a file, there's a separate video linked below for you, but you'll basically just want to go to the upload button here and click on upload image and then browse your computer. Once you browse your computer, then it'll appear here. You'll just want to hit the upload button in the bottom corner and select your design under recent uploads and click add to canvas. So the very first step is that we're going to need to size these appropriately. So my acrylic disc ornaments are 4 inches across. You're going to size these relative to yours, of course. I have resources for where I got mine on the blog post that is linked below, so you'll be able to find that information if you would like. Mine are 4 across, so I'm going to scale this down to 3.5 because there needs to be some grace on each side of the ornament. So you can just click and drag and scale down, or if you like, you can come right up here to the size and type in the exact dimension to get it down to where you want it to be. The next step is that we need to change this from a cut line to an engraving line. So make sure you have your Maker or Maker 3 or any model of Maker that engraves set here in Design Space, and then you'll be able to see under when the operation menu is clicked, you'll be able to see the engraving option for you here. So you'll want to select your design and click on engrave. It'll change the operation from a basic cut to an engraving line. And you'll want to do that with any of your designs. This one already has engrave, and you'll see it engrave under the operation. You'll also see it over here in the layers panel that it is an engraved operation type. So the next step, I'm just going to hide this one here. The next step is to go to the cut screen by clicking the Make It button. Now here's the really important part. We need to move this so that it is actually 6 down from the top, 6 squares down from the top, and 6 squares into the right. The reason for this is if we try to engrave up here at the very top hand corner where it defaults, Cricut actually shifts things when you load your material, and I think it does it to give it some grace in case your material isn't perfectly aligned, but when you're dealing with engraving, you need to be rather precise. So shifting our design down on the mat is actually going to allow us to have more control over where the design falls on our disc. And we're going to be mirroring this mat image here on our screen to the mat itself, and I will show you that in just a moment when I place my disc. So count 6 squares down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this line right here. And then 6 squares over, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you want to make sure that the design with the box that goes around it, in my case here it's blue, you want to make sure that that is sitting just barely on those 2 lines. So just barely set it right there against 6 down and 6 to the right. So that is exactly how you want to set up your design here on the cutting mat. And then you'll go to click continue once you've set that, and it'll connect to your Cricut machine. You'll want to set your base material, so you might need to click Browse All Materials and scroll down until you see the acrylic options. I'm going to choose the 2mm, although I have tried both of these. I do not see a whole lot of depth difference when I choose these, but I'm just going to choose the 2 and click Done. And now we're going to go ahead and place our ornament on our mat and load our engraving tool and proceed with engraving this ornament design.
Okay, so now that we have our file completely set up in Cricut Design Space, our machine is flashing, it's ready to be loaded. We need to go ahead and put our disc onto the mat. Now remember a moment ago I told you about how many squares you need to count down, because we need to match the mat on the screen with the mat that we're loading here. So we need to make sure we get our placement correct so it engraves correctly and you're not ending up with, you know, half an engraving off of the acrylic disc. So acrylic discs generally will come with a film on them, they almost always do, on both sides. So you'll want to make sure to just gently peel that up. You need to remove that, otherwise you won't actually be engraving on the disc, you'll be engraving on plastic film, which is not meant to be that way. All right, so I peeled up that plastic film, and just like we did on our mat a minute ago, we're going to count 6 down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we're going to count 6 over, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to be placing our ornament right here in this square area. Now, one thing that's really, really important, and I did this in my rookie days of engraving, you do not want to set your engraving disc to where the edges are touching your 2 points that we're lining up here. You do not want to put it to the edge, because it's going to shift your design, and half the design, not half, but a significant portion of the design is going to be up here. So what you need to do is, where that little hole is, you need to make sure that little hole is what, the bottom of the little hole is what is sitting on that line. So let me show you again. This, with the 2 lines, this is the line we're working with, and this is the line we're working with. Right now the edges of my ornament are on that. That is not correct. You want to make sure that the bottom of that little hole is sitting on that line. And then for the side part here, you just want it to be a tiny bit over, like so. It doesn't have to, it's not very specific, it just has to be hung over enough that it's not sitting directly on the line. So if you get that top one lined up, then you'll bring this one over maybe just under 1/4 of an inch, if I had to give an exact specification. But not that much, just enough to where it's sitting, the line is sitting right inside of the circle and not on the edge, because otherwise your whole design is going to shift. So this is how you want your disc to look here on your mat. Now give it a good press down on that strong grip mat. Make sure your strong grip mat is relatively fresh. You don't want it to be not sticky enough to where your ornament shifts around on you. I'm peeling a little bit of painter's tape off here in order to stick onto the mat. I'm just doing a little bit right up top and a little bit right up bottom. It barely is touching the top and the bottom. The engraving is not going to be going over those because we have scaled our ornament piece. This is a 4-inch disc, but we have scaled the actual design about 3.5. So that will be that grace area there. We can put a little tape just to make sure it's not going to go anywhere. So that is how I would prep an ornament on the mat. And now it's time to go ahead and load our machine. Now the next part here is where you're really just going to need to sit back and work on something else, because it's going to take anywhere from 25 to 35 minutes for this to engrave. You want to make sure when you first load this onto your cutting machine that as it begins to engrave that you see that it is touching in the right area of your mat. I have occasionally had a Cricut sometimes start engraving somewhere else randomly on the mat and it makes no sense. So you want to make sure you just catch that from the beginning rather than getting 30 minutes in and realizing that it's not correct. So just pay attention to that it's getting started correctly, and then you can kind of focus on something else for a little while. Now, if you have your other blades installed, you want to make sure you have your engraving tip on. This is the quick swap housing, and I have the engraving tip, which is tip number 41. If you've never changed one of these before, all you have to do is press the button on the top, and then it will go right on to change out the tips. This quick swap housing can be searched online. It also comes with like the scoring wheel and stuff, and you can change the tips out. So make sure you have the right tip installed on the housing and that your engraving blade is what is loaded into your Cricut machine before you hit the go button. So remember I said before you start focusing on maybe something else you're working on, you just want to check that it's hitting in the right spot, and it is engraving right at the top of that acrylic ornament where we want it to. So it's not randomly picking another corner. I've only had that happen once or twice in my 4 years of engraving now, and it's pretty rare, but it's just a good idea to make sure it's starting in the right spot before you turn your attention to something else. All right, so let's let it alone and let it do its thing. Okay, so our engraving is complete. I'm going to go ahead and unload my mat here. And then you're just going to want to peel away the painter's tape and get it off of the mat. Alright, so there's going to be some dust here on your ornament, and I switched backgrounds here because the darker background is going to allow you to see it on camera a lot better. There's going to be some dust. You're going to want to take a damp paper towel and just kind of wipe it off to get that dust off. Now, there's a couple other things here to do. So we do need to string our ornament, which we'll get to in just a minute. I am going to be adding some little rhinestones to mine with Gem Tack by Beacon, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute here. I do have some people who ask me about the enamel darkening pens that can help darken your engraving to make it stand out more. Now, I tested this on one of my designs and it did not turn out very well. It ended up looking very dirty, and I do not think the enamel pens work very well for acrylic. However, they do work really well for engraving things like dog tags and jewelry and metal. So if you're interested in learning more about how to engrave on metals, I have a separate blog post and video on that, which I will link below for you. They tend to work, these pens tend to work best in that case, not so much for this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and add a few gems, and then I'm going to add my baker's twine string to finish our ornaments off here. So I'm using Beacon Gem Tack here, and traditionally you would spread your gem tack and then add your rhinestones over the top of it. I'm actually going to put some here in one of my little dishes and then dip my rhinestone in it and place it on that way, because I don't want there to be any really obvious residue since we're dealing with something that's so transparent. So I'm going to be picking the rhinestone up, dipping it in the gem tack, and then adding it to the ornament. Now, this is completely optional, of course. I think it adds a little something extra, a little extra sparkle is always a good thing. But this is totally optional, so just decide what you would like to do. I have had more people ask me, have you tried things like putting paint behind the ornament, or even like some vinyl or something like that to make it darker? And I have found that paint does not work very well. It actually blurs the engraving, so I don't recommend that. But you can try cutting a circle of solid vinyl that happens to be the same color on both sides, and you could give that a try. I still didn't really like it. I preferred it to look like this in the end, but it's some things you can experiment with if you'd like to try out some different ideas. So I'm just picking up my gemstone here and dipping it in the gem tack, and then adding it here to my ornament. And the gem tack does go on white, but it does dry clear. Nevertheless, I didn't want to spread it around because I really wanted to, make sure that there wasn't any residue that would show through, because when the Christmas lights shine through, you would be able to see those imperfections potentially, and I didn't want to take that risk. So I do have other ornament tutorials on how to add glitter and then vinyl over that. On the opposite side, I also have acrylic ornament tutorials with paint as well as with gold leafing on one side and vinyl on another. So all of those can be found on my YouTube channel, and they're a lot of fun to make. These make amazing gifts, and one of the things I love most about the engraving for the ornaments is they look like something that's really difficult for someone to hand make because of the type of craft it is. So I find that it really impresses your recipient a lot when you say that you made something like this. Okay, so this gem tack will take a little bit of time to dry, and I'm just going to set it aside for a few minutes so that it can dry. But you can see this engraving turned out really beautiful. Now I'm just using a baker's twine here, so you can use a baker's twine or ribbon. I found these on Amazon. They're really pretty, like shimmery Christmas colors. And I'm just going to take this, I cut down about an 8-inch piece or so, maybe a little less. You want to cut more than what you intend to use just to make sure. And you want to bring the two ends together. And I'm going to do it on this one here since that one's still drying. And you want to put the two ends through the little hole at the top. And then the loop that forms here, you want to take the two ends and thread it through and pull it just like that. And then you'll be able to tie this onto the branch of a Christmas tree or wherever you might wish to display it. So that is how I would engrave acrylic discs for ornaments. I hope you guys liked this tutorial, and these files are free for you on the blog, so go ahead and download them. There's a few other designs that are not displayed here that are also included. All that information is linked below. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.